and they will find out as it happens. So to begin with, I'll introduce myself. My name is Nathan. I study entomology and I go to Cornell. I'm a junior and I work for me, Yan, at IvyOnline, and it's been a wonderful experience. So now I'm going to turn it over to me, Yan, so he can introduce himself and IvyOnline a little bit more.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Mi Yan. I'm a graduate student at Cornell University, and I'm studying in environmental education, and I'm also the founder of IvyOnline Academy. Yes, so Nathan, do you want me to share a little bit about IvyOnline Academy, or I can do that after Leah's introduction?
I can introduce Leah, and then we can talk about IvyOnline.
Okay, sounds great.
So
Thank you.
I would like to, as you can see, she just turned her camera on. This is Leah. She is great. Leah is a senior at Cornell University. She is majoring in applied economics and management within concentrations in finance and business analytics. She's originally from Poughkeepsie, New York. And on campus, she is involved in Cornell Business Analytics as the president, as well as a member of the Dyson Undergraduate Council, Apex Capital, and the Phi Gamma Nu business fraternity. She interned for her sophomore summer at Dilatl at Tel Aviv doing consulting, and her junior year at Guggenheim doing investment banking, where she will return full-time after graduation. So she is the real deal here, guys. She uses Excel all the time for her job and has landed some successful internships with it. But she's also going to go over some more everyday functions so that it can benefit all of you, regardless of what your job is. And then back to me, Yan, for an introduction of IvyOnline.
Okay, thank you, Nathan, and thank you, Leah, for coming today and to share your experience with us. Okay, let me start with a very brief introduction about IvyOnline Academy. So we aim to help enrich students' application with online research training and projects through collaboration with top universities. And we came up with this business idea in the fall semester 2019, and then we accepted by the Cornell Student Startup Accelerator eLab and started our entrepreneurial journey. So we structure our program into three stages. The first stage is to learn the basics. So students will take our course and to learn the fundamental research method. And after that, students can practice their data analysis skills by solving the cases from the real world. So we have prepared many cases spanning different fields and industries, so students can know how to solve the real cases from the real world. After the first two stages, students can pioneer their own research by working with our instructional team one-on-one. We started our first cohort this summer during the pandemic, and now we already have research programs spanning from social science, information science to life sciences. So we have a new course which will start soon. That is Eco Solutions Smarter Greenhouse. In this course, students will write a paper about the greenhouse and also do a poster presentation. And we also have a course on machine learning, and the new round will be in 2 weeks. So and we also add the business analysis in that in the machine learning course, so students can practice how to solve the business analysis cases by using the machine learning. And finally, please follow our social media account like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or WeChat, and we will post our new courses and our webinars in the future. Thank you.
And thank you for that great introduction about IvyOnline and what we do. So again, please remember to keep in touch with us, and this will be a bi-weekly webinar schedule. So in another 2 weeks, you can get some great new webinars. And with that, I will turn it over to Leah so she can give her speech.
Thank you so much, Nathan. Yeah, so I'm really happy to be here to be able to talk to you. So I thought first I'd start off and just like tell you a little bit about who I am and what I do and why I've used Excel in the past, and then I would love for this to be very interactive. So I have a file I'm going to share with all of you, and we can sort of go through some of the exercises together. We'll see how far in the file we get. And these are just really good skills. So like Nathan mentioned, I'm a senior here at Cornell, and I am also the president of Cornell Business Analytics. So Cornell Business Analytics is a on-campus organization that provides consulting and data analytics services for multiple numbers of companies. So I've worked with anywhere from local startups to Fortune 500 companies, and it's been a great experience. And oftentimes we do use, or at least start off with, Excel, because it's a really good tool for manipulating data, you know, just from the very beginning, and getting to get a little bit familiar with that. So I've definitely used a lot of Excel in that context. And also I am going into investment banking on Wall Street after I graduate, and I use a ton of Excel there as well. So you can really use it in a lot of different formats. Most recently, I've been working on a project for a statistics group that I'm in, and I've been using it to analyze a lot of the data that we've collected. So lots of applications, and I'm excited to get started. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to drop a link in the chat, so hopefully everyone can get that. And if you would open that link, it should lead you to a file. Which I really encourage you guys to download and to follow along on your own file as I go through this file. And I'd love for this to be as interactive as possible. So if you ever want me to slow down or re-explain something or have a question, feel free to just unmute yourself and ask. Great. So I'm going to give you a couple seconds to do that, and then I'm going to go ahead. Sorry, I have another monitor over here. But then I'm going to go ahead and screen share. And we can start.
Yes, so Leah, some of our students are from China, so they cannot access to Google document, but I can download the Excel and share the file in our WeChat group.
Great, thank you. All right, and let me know if you have any difficulties downloading that, but hopefully you won't. Great. Okay, so yeah, this is just an introduction to Excel. We're going to learn some key functions and procedures, and then how we can use that to work with a lot of different types of data, clean it up, and really just make it usable to us in a way that's a lot more efficient than doing anything by hand. So if everyone can go to the sort and filter tab, I'm not going to spend a ton of time here, but I just wanted to show you one of the very basics of, you know, being able to filter and sort things. So here you can see that there's a very large table with a lot of data. It's all mixed up. You know, so if you wanted to say find all the 2010 budgets for retail footprint, you know, departments, there's a few ways you could go around it. And I think my first instinct would have been to you know, Control F and type in retail and then go down and see everything, even though it pops up twice per link. But you can see how it's very inefficient. So what you can very easily do is go ahead and highlight this entire top row. And you can do that just by clicking down and holding as you move over. And then in the Home tab, you can go over to the right and you see something called Sort and Filter. You can press that little filter. And now you can do so much more. So for example, sort A to Z. Now everything's in alphabetical order over here, as you can see. Or for example, what if I just want to see something about corporate leadership? I can unselect everything and just click on corporate leadership. And those are the only files that will show to me. So this is just a really quick way if you're trying, you know, you have a bunch of data, you're just trying to, you know, get a quick overview of what it's telling you. You want to see certain sections. This is a really good way to do it. And then this is just a good way to filter, or you could also filter by budget. There's a lot of different things that you could do. That was filter smallest to largest, so you could also do largest to smallest. So I just wanted to introduce that to you real quick because it's a quick, very helpful tool. And now I'm going to talk about references in math and Excel. So some of this is probably going to be review for you, but I just wanted to go over it to make sure we're all starting on the same sort of baseline here. So the mathematical function you're going to see in Excel are very similar to what you would see in a normal math class. But the key to any formula in Excel at all is that you always start every formula with an equal sign. A little backwards from how you normally do it. But here, for example, I would go into this cell and I would type in equals first. And then say I just wanted to do, 5 plus 6. 5 plus 6. Simple way to do math. Any of these operators can be used. And then I want to show you something else. So instead of typing in 5 and 6, say I had those numbers somewhere else in a file, I wanted to reference them. So what you can do is you can go over here and you can just click on a cell. So that example is 2, and then click on 3. And I'll get you 5, right? So I just wanted to show that real quick. And then what I really want to talk about here is references. If anyone's ever taken, a coding class, a lot of the functions in Excel are a lot like coding, I think. But there's one thing is that it doesn't do is we can't really loop something around like we do in coding. So what you have to do is you have to be able to drag a formula anywhere over a large set of data. And when you're dragging formulas, as I'll show you in a minute, a lot of your cell references will move with you. So you really want to be cognizant of when you're referencing cells. Is that relative or absolute? And once we get that done, we'll have a good set of initial tools and we can get into some actual problems with budgets and stuff like that and some cooler formulas, but we just want to get this down first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and I just have, a few numbers set up for you. And I'm just going to say equals because we're referencing a cell. And I'm going to click on that one. And of course it pops up as 1 because that's what the cell is. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the bottom right corner where you see that little plus sign. And I'm going to move it over. Now what you're going to see is as I moved it to the right, the cell reference also moved to the right. So here we're referencing cell A2. Over here, we're referencing cell B2. So for every increment you move right, so does that. So does the reference. And I'm going to pull down and it's going to do the same thing. So this is now referencing cell A3 and this is referencing cell A4. So that's called relative cell references. That's when something moves as you move it across the screen. Now, there are a few ways to make the cell reference absolute. So you can highlight your entire text, or even just when you're first writing it, right after you first type that in, you can do function 4. And that adds those dollar signs between both the column number and the row number. And what the dollar signs do is they, absolute reference it. So you can move down and it won't move, or you can move right and it won't move. The last thing I want to show you for this real quick is you can take away $1 sign and it'll only partially absolute reference the cell. So here, A is not like locked in. It's relatively referenced, while the 2, the row number, is absolutely referenced. So as we move this over, we're going to see it moves because the column is not absolutely referenced. But if we move it down, it's not going to move because the row can't move because the row is absolutely referenced. Or you could do the opposite, where you have the dollar sign in front of the A, and it will just do the exact opposite. All right. Does everyone understand that? Does that make sense to everyone? Feel free to chime in if it doesn't. All right, great. So now I'm going to move on to the actual formulas and all of the fun stuff. So this is VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP formula stands for vertical lookup, and it's probably one of the most useful functions if you need to grab specific pieces of information from a very large data set. Here, of course, it's relatively small table. You can see it pretty easily, but when you're working with large amounts of data, it won't be as easy to just go in and pull it. So this is a really quick and efficient way to do that for large data sets. So VLOOKUP, like I said, is a vertical lookup. So it's going to help you find something in the table. And the nice thing about Excel is whenever you type in a formula, it always sort of gives you what they expect you to do. So here we're going to type in VLOOKUP, and you'll see this. So you have your lookup value, your table, your column index number, and your range of lookup. Those are the different inputs that we have to give. So we're going to first do our lookup value. So what we want to find out is what level, what division they're in, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to say, so we're given this, we're going to just reference that right off the bat because we know that it's right there. We don't need to type in the actual H. We can just reference the cell that contains the H. The next thing we're going to do is table array. So we're going to go over here and we're just going to highlight the whole table. And that's our table. That's where we want to pull our information out of. And again, we're separating everything with commas. So just keep that in mind. And now we're on our column index number. So now we want to tell, Excel how many rows over, how many columns over, sorry, how many columns over they want to move. So here, it's kind of nice. We labeled as the number of years in the company. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So we know that we want to find 6 years or 5 years. That's the given. But I will say the one thing to note here is that we can take the 5, but the table actually starts over here, with division. So this is the first column really, and this is the second column. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the 5 and we're just going to add 1 to that to keep that on track. So it shifts everything over by 1. So now it's like we're starting the table over here at this first column. And then the last thing is it's going to ask you if you want an approximate match or an exact match. And in most cases, you're almost always going to want an exact match. So you can just click there and type in false. And once you're done with your formula, you're going to just close it with that parentheses, enter. And now we have our number, and we can obviously check it ourselves because this is a small table. We can go over down to division H and we can see, okay, 5 years at the company. And yeah, it's the same number, 47,000. Again, we could have done this manually. This is for much, much larger sets of data. So that's the VLOOKUP function. So I hope you guys have this up on your screen. So what I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to give you a bit of an exercise. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do it on your own, and then I'll do it with you. So here you have an employee, you have the division that they're in, and you have the number of years they've been in that or been at the company. I want you to type in a formula here to find their salary. And once you're done, I want to see if you can, with that little black plus sign, drag down that formula so it applies to all the rows. So I don't want you to type in a formula for every single row of employees. You should type in it once and then drag it down. So see if that is helpful. And go ahead, I'll give you a few minutes to do that.
So thank you. As we're doing that, I have started my own formula in my Excel sheet, but I also, Leah does a lot of business in her everyday life. I do a lot of science in my everyday life. And one of the things that's really important with science is repetition. So you get all this data, you get repeated trial after trial after trial, and you end up with just Excel sheets full of data. It might be about genes, it might be about where things are located. I study entomology again, so a lot of my data is with bees. And so it's what flowers have the bees gone to at what times, and there's just these massive charts. And so having something where you can just look it up and quickly find instead of like tracing all the way across and tracing all the way down, very, very helpful for a range of reasons. So even though a lot of these examples are business, the applications can be from across the board.
All right, so with that, I will go ahead and we can do it together if you haven't finished it already. But thank you, Nathan, for the words. So again, we start every formula with an equal sign. Then we type in VLOOKUP. Then we want to look our lookup value. So we're looking up what division or what level they're on. The table, we're going to highlight over here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pull it down later, right? So we want to absolutely lock that table. We're never moving our table reference. So I'm going to hit function F4. Then we're going to take our years at our level +1. And we're going to type in false for our exact match. And hit enter. And then we can pull that all the way down. And like I said, over here, we have, this is a relative reference, right? These two have moved down with you, but we lock that table and so it will move. And then what you can do is there's something called equals sum, because you don't usually want to type in like this cell plus that cell plus that cell. So what you can do is you can just highlight the whole column and it'll sum the whole column for you. So that's a really, really helpful function. I'm going to move on to a couple of other. Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. So how do you input the $? Do you have any kind of combination, kind of using kind of a quick access to the $, or I just put my the keyboard, type the $?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot of, shortcuts in Excel, and this is definitely one of the ones that I use the most. But if you type in anything, do a reference to something, and immediately after you hit function F4, the fourth function on my computer, I have to click function and then F4. Some people just have to click function 4, but that'll automatically input those $signs for you. And then if you click it again, it'll move the $sign. So you have a few different tries figuring out where you want that $sign. So just keep clicking function F4 and it'll get those there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's very helpful because I always type by myself.
I can add in a couple of shortcuts that I find helpful as we go too. Any other questions? Okay, great. So let's move on. So here I'm going to talk about a bunch of different functions that can be used to do some basic sort of true or false tests. Again, if you've done programming before, this might be very familiar to you, but we're going to use an if statement. So the format for an if statement is we're going to always start with equals, of course, and then if, we're going to put in our logical test. So that's saying is if this is true, if something equals something, if this test to true, then you're going to put in this value over here. And if not, then we're going to have another value to output. So let's do this one together. So we want to see, we have two countries, Canada and Mexico. So we're going to create an if statement so that if this cell does say Canada, then we're going to write fun. Otherwise, we're going to leave it blank. So start with our equals and we're going to type in if. And another quick thing is whenever you see sort of that first thing highlighted, if you just hit tab, that'll finish off that statement for you. We're going to say, click into the cell. We're going to say equals, and then we're going to type in Canada. And anytime in Excel that you want to type in something that's not a keyword or a key value, but just a block of text, you always want to put in quotations. So if B7 equals Canada, comma, the value of true is we're going to say fun. Otherwise, why don't we just say, nope, not Canada. And then again, close that up, hit enter. Of course, it says fun because this does say Canada, but if we changed it and we wrote in like Mexico over here, that would change pretty quickly too. So again, this is just something that you might think, okay, I can just look and see if it's Canada. This is things that are helpful for large data sets, which a lot of experimenting naturally leads to. So here we are going to do sort of the next step of an if statement, and that's sum if and count if. So those are, we want to sum things and we want to count things, but conditionally, if they meet a certain requirements. So here we're going to create a sum if. So we're going to sum all of the numbers that correspond to the letter A. So you see here we have sort of two rows right next to each other. So we're going to start with equals and then type in sum if. And this is our range. So this is what we're testing. We want to test this. And then we're going to do our comment and we're going to see our criteria. So I put our criteria right down here. So you can just click on that. And that's what we're testing it against. We want to see if it equals A. And then this is optional because sometimes we just want to add in the numbers that equal a certain number. But this is our sum range. So this is the range that we actually want to sum if our first range meets the certain criteria. So I'm going to close it off and hit enter. And here we get 6. And that makes sense because 3 plus 2 plus 1 does equal 6. And you can do that for any letter. If we change this to B, then that would be another value. That would be 15. And this is also really helpful because we're not just doing a formula where we're saying this plus this plus this. We can change our criteria to output whatever we want. So we change one cell instead of changing the formula. So that's why it's really helpful to keep your criteria in an outside cell so you can quickly change what it's about. And then countif is very similar, but here where we summed, the 3 plus 2 plus 1, this time we're solely counting how many times it occurs. So we're going to type countif, and then the range over here again, and then type in our criteria. Oh, I'm so sorry, I did not hit the comma we needed. And then our criteria is over here. We're going to close that, and of course it counts B 3 times. For example, if you have a lot of data on an experiment that you've run and you want to see how many times something has had this result in the experiment, that could be an application. The last thing I'm going to go over in this section is sort of and or statements. So here we're actually going to do something called nesting. That's when you put statements inside of each other to get the end result that you want. And or are obviously things you're very familiar with. The only thing here is what we're going to do is we're going to pull out sort of the and or from the middle. So instead of saying Canada and Mexico, we're going to say and Canada, comma, Mexico. So it's a little weird, but that's sort of the syntax here. So again, we're going to start with the equals and then the if. And then we're going to start with our logical test. So our logical test is we want to see if this cell and this cell are both Canada. So we're going to start with our and, like I said, and then click on that cell, comma, that cell. And then we're going to close that. So normally we won't close our parentheses till the end, but this is a statement within a statement. So we're going to close that parentheses there, comma, and then the value is true. I think I wrote equals 0 if they're both Canada. And if not, I'm just going to say nope. And then close that, and I'll hit enter. Oops. Oh, so I said this, if this is true and this is true. So I just clicked on that. I forgot to tell them what it should be equal to. So I want to say if this one equals Canada, and this one equals Canada, sorry, gotta catch myself there. Then it's nope. So I gotta tell what it's equal to. But what we're seeing here is just if B37 equals Canada and C37 equals Canada, then maple syrup either, no. Right? And now we're gonna do the exact same statement, but we're gonna keep an or there. So we wanna see, if that's an or. So now we're just testing if at least one of them is equal to Canada. I'm going to click on that one and say equals Canada and close that statement. And then if at least one, I'll say yep. And if not, I'll say no. And close that and hit enter. And yes, at least one of them says Canada. And again, if we change this, both Canada, this would automatically update. If we changed it to both of them were Mexico, they both would automatically update. So this would change to no, right? So that's a lot. I think I just threw at you real quick. But I'd love to see if you guys give you a few minutes again to do this exercise, and then we can do it as a group. But here we have, a budget, maybe this is a little bit applicable to you, and 2 sort of scenarios, right? So here's how much everything costs. I promise these were like very arbitrary numbers, so don't judge me. It's not how much I think these things actually cost. But this is, sort of your first scenario is where you're going to pay for groceries and rents and movies, but not travel, but you're going to pay for your decor, but not shopping and for restaurants. And now I want you to see Can you sum all of these costs only for the things you decided to pay for? And then can you count up how many things you decided to pay for? And then can you do the same for scenario 2? So remember, don't write for formulas, write 2, and then pull the other ones over. So make sure to absolute reference where you need to. Give you guys just a few minutes. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute as we go, and then we'll do it together. All right, so it's okay if you haven't finished, but I'm just gonna go ahead and we can do this as a group because I wanna make sure, we have enough time for everything. So here we're gonna do our sum if statement. So we're summing all of the values if they meet our criteria. So this is the range that we want to check. And then we want to see our criteria is the word yes, if we're actually going to pay for it. And then this is the range that we want to sum, and we want to add up those costs. So before I close it, I want to figure out what I want to absolute reference right now for when we move it over. So this range over here, the blue one, I don't want to absolute reference it. I want it to move over as I move into scenario 2. But the costs are not going to change rows as I move over. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to click function F4, and I'm going to absolute reference that. And that adds everything up, a really quick format. I'm just going to click this number sign on top, make it look a little pretty. Now I know how much I'm going to pay. And we can do a very similar thing with count if. So this is our range. Our criteria again is yes. And we're paying for 5 things. And now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to highlight both, and I'm going to pull them both over. So now you have, multiple budget scenarios, and this might be applicable to you as you guys are, entering college, going on to life in the real world. So I'm gonna wrap it up there, but I'm happy to stick around for a little bit if you guys have any questions, answer anything like that. Yeah, I hope this was a little bit helpful.
Thank you, Leah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Leah, I have a question. So like in your internship on the business analysis, do you use this kind of skills a lot to do the business analysis? Okay.
Absolutely. We deal, so I work sort of on the financial side of things. So I deal with massive amounts of data and information on the balance sheets and the income statements of very large companies. So we have pages and pages of numbers and information, and we use these formulas all the time to quickly and efficiently grab the stuff that we need to, find the numbers and create models that we need to evaluate these decisions as well. So these simple things really save a lot of time and create a lot of efficiency.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead, stop screen sharing.
Okay, so do we have any questions from our audience? Yeah, before we start the webinar, I see a lot of students in our audience. They are interested in becoming a business analyst or want to study in this major. So if you have any questions about like this major, please also maybe ask Leah for some suggestions. So Leah, could you share a little bit with us, like because like business analysis is really a very hot topic, hot topic recently. So how to become, how to start your career in these fields? Do you have some suggestions to us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's still kind of a relatively new field. I know that, with my major, they're constantly adding new courses and refining it because this is still something everyone's sort of trying to figure out. But what I would say is if you're really interested in business analytics, I think it's something that's extremely widely applicable. So in any job that you do, even if you don't have a job in the field of business analytics, being able to, know businesses and being able to make business decisions using data, I think is just very widely helpful in a lot of fields, like what I think Nathan was talking about in research a little bit. I, of course, find it helpful in actual data analytics jobs. It's also very helpful in marketing and a whole range of things. So if you're really trying to get, sort of interested in, analytics and stuff like that, I would say a really good place to start is just even like, and this is sort of business specific, but for business specific people, just reading, reading about what's going on. Morning brew is a good thing I like to use every morning. I just, figure out what's going on in the economy and see the trends there and get to know what things are going on, because the more cases you read about, the more you see patterns. And then sort of on the analytics side, I think it's really helpful to know a language in coding. So personally, the ones that I know and I found helpful are, Python, Java. I also know VBA, which is sort of the coding language behind Excel. So if you get all of your functions down and you're feeling really good about it, VBA is sort of the next step up after that. And then, also some data visualization tools like Tableau, I think are used quite frequently in my experience. R too, sometimes also helpful. But yeah, so you don't need to know all of these tools right away. I'm definitely not saying that you do, but I'm saying business analytics and in data analytics general, it's sort of an amalgamation of a lot of different things. So, know what's going on with companies, just read up about them. It'll help you see patterns later. Get, maybe some tools of how do I look at data? Excel is a good tool, Python is a good tool. And then also, how do I show that data? How do I visualize it for my audience? Because that's an extremely important part of what you do. You think, oh, it doesn't really need to be. But the thing is, you're often presenting data to people who are not understanding it in the same way that you do. So you have to make sure that you're presenting it in a way that they can clearly understand, and then they can use that data to make business decisions or decisions about their project or anything like that. So just, getting comfortable with even making graphs in Excel or, in PowerPoint or something like that. And then when you, get a little further past that, you'll find out there are a whole lot more tools out there. But if you're really just looking to get started, I think a great place is just, looking at the data that you have around you and seeing what are some fun things you can do with it, just play around with it. And, once you're in college, those are sort of the things I would recommend learning about.
Yeah, thank you. And IvyOnline also have a new course which combines machine learning and business analysis. So if any of our students want to study more on business analysis, also welcome to signing up for our courses. Yeah. So I have another question, Leah. So could you tell me, share with me more about your association, like what kind of activity that Cornell Business Analysis Association have, and you mentioned that you served for some organizations to help them to understand their kind of data. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm happy to tell you a little bit more about the work we do. So we take on 5 projects typically every year, working with different companies. And I'm happy, maybe best way to do this, I can tell you about a couple projects that I've gotten the chance to work on.
Sure.
So one of the ones I've most recently worked on, it's actually about a year ago now, because as president, I wasn't on a team, but about a year ago was my last project. And that was for a national nonprofit, which is nice, gotta feel like I was giving back a little bit. And what we did was we were able to take data from a few different sources from them. So we had a lot of data on their donors, so who their donors were, how much they donated, information like that. And then also social media data, so anything from Facebook, Instagram, who was their audience, who were they reaching. We had a lot of data on their spending for ads, so who, how much were they paying, how effective were the ads, again, who were they reaching, very important, who were engaging, that sort of thing. And then we also had access to their website, so when you go to some place on their website, what are you clicking, where are you going? So lots of different data, and we sort of were able to pull it all together. And again, for this project, the tools that we used the most were Google Analytics. We used Excel a lot, some light coding, and a little bit of Tableau for data visualization and presentation. And what we were really able to do is sort of look at their website, look at their social media, look at their donors, figure out where were areas for improvement, where were they losing people, where were they gaining their interest, what kinds of ads were gaining their interest, where were people engaging and commenting versus just sort of liking and moving on. So a lot of different factors. And one of the most important things that we were able to sort of figure out is that the people that they were reaching on their social media pages and the people that they were reaching with their ad spend were a very different audience than the people who were actually making the biggest donations. And as a nonprofit, of course, donations are very important to be able to run and give back. So that was really big for them, because they're not getting the people that they need to keep their business running. So that was something we were able to tell them. And that's very cool. Out of data, we can find these different insights. And it was really nice, actually. They recently applied and received a grant, and they're making a position that'll now execute on some of the recommendations that we were able to make, looking at their data, looking at their business, and sort of making recommendations based off of that. So that was a project that I got the chance to work on.
Yeah, that sounds very cool and very meaningful. So how did you approach to that organization? So did you find them, or they reached out to you?
Yeah, so the sort of client acquisition is sort of a e-board thing the executive board of the club does. So now that I'm on the executive board, I can tell you a little bit more about that, but it's a bit of a mix. A lot of people sort of hear about us from other clients or through just the general grapevine and have reached out to us, which has been really awesome. And then also there's a lot of like sort of listservs or resources that go out to Cornell alumni or to people who are interested in certain things. So we just like do a quick post or a quick email about who we are and what we do. And then a lot of people generally reach out, and sort of we narrow it down to what projects we think are best for the club based on what's a really good fit for us with business and data analytics and what those students in the club can get the most out of.
Wow, sounds great. So do you also have a training session for your members?
Yes, absolutely. So we do train them in a lot of different things, but it's a 2-week-long process. We meet a lot during those 2 weeks, but that's okay. And we do a quick crash course in Excel, Python, Tableau, R, a few other things, and also some professional development stuff, which is equally as important, I think. How to effectively present to clients, how to even make a PowerPoint, which is something everyone like thinks they know how to do. Like I thought I knew how to do it, and then like actual people taught me how to make a PowerPoint, and I was like, I do not know how to do this, So there's definitely a quick crash course in everything, and then people are able to work on projects after that.
Yeah, oh, that sounds amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really a meaningful it's a meaningful project to help more organizations to utilize their data and to make more impact for the society.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I believe so. Okay, let's see if we have any other questions from our audience. Okay, thank you so much. So maybe I will hand it over to Nathan.
All right, yes, that was our webinar. So thank you all of the attendees for coming. Thank you, Mi Yan, for hosting this and keeping IvyOnline on its feet. And thank you, Leah, so much for presenting for us tonight. And with that, I think that we can sign off. So yeah, I'm going to give Leah a little round of applause. But thank you so much. And hopefully I'll see you all in 2 weeks at our next webinar.
Okay, thank you. Bye, everyone.